Welcome back, Estelden here. So 8.3's been out for a few weeks now, and it's a decent patch for the most part. The raid is really good, despite N'Zoth and some performance issues. But there's a couple of things about it that are really getting a bit frustrating. The horrific visions are genuinely fantastic. It's edge of your seat stuff, and I think mostly players can't wait to get back in each week, which brings me to the chores that are actually required to get there. The problem with World of Warcraft right now is the open world content feels like a big chore. These assaults we're doing in Uldum and the Vale of Eternal Blossoms are the exact same stuff we were doing in WoD. It's fill the bar, everything is basically the same, just all reskinned, whether it be enemies, items you picked up, it's all a bore. There is the odd puzzle, but they do feel a little disjointed, like team members created these and just inserted them in at random, which does feel odd, and it really does make me think that 8.3 was intended to be like Argus, where Ny'alotha was intended to be a genuinely large area of its own, but was massively scaled back once Activision told them Shadowlands needed to be the priority. Is it simply a budget thing though? Well, not really, because it's hard to remember a time where WoW was doing consistently good world content. I go back to Mists of Pandaria, and I feel like I'll be flamed for this, but I genuinely enjoyed the daily content back then. Every area and every faction felt unique, the variety in quests was actually fun, and I felt like I was progressing towards something with a fair and reasonable end goal in sight. Then we got to WoD, which was immensely boring to me. Fill the bar was just ridiculous. Even going back to Hellfire Citadel on a 120 and doing the assaults there feels completely tedious. So I don't dare to think back to the 6.2 days where that was actually current content and I'd be fighting those enemies to scale. It took far too long and makes you think that using time spent in game as a metric for success is something Blizzard must have been doing even back then. Blizzard's problem is they put all their time and energy into world content during the leveling process of an expansion, despite the fact that's a very small portion of what you'll actually be doing in game thanks to things like AP grinds. WoD, Legion, even BFA, the leveling experience is actually pretty good in terms of areas and story, but it pretty much ends when you hit the level cap or you finish a specific endgame campaign, for example. Then you're just farming the same stuff over and over, whether it be world quests, dailies that resemble world quests, or the rare mob farm. Nothing stands out, and whether I play through Argus, Nazjatar, Tannin Jungle, I might as well be in the exact same area because not a lot has changed. And I'm not sure who's providing this feedback that this is great stuff. I mean, it's not bad, but if we compare, say, the Battle of Dazara Lore or a Horrific Vision to doing, let's say, a week's worth of quests in Uldum, which is going to take considerably longer in terms of time than probably both those activities, is it not a little odd that that is so boring? This is what the casual player base is going to see for the most part, unless they actually go seeking out more, and they are going to be doing that if what they witness firsthand at the start is to this standard. If we take it back a step, it's pretty obvious that Blizzard's first discussion is never, is what we're making fun? No, instead it's, is what we're making easy enough to complete for even someone who pays absolutely zero attention to what they're doing in game? Can they complete it while they're watching TV shows on another screen, while they're eating dinner? That's pretty much the metric, and it's resulted in quest design that's basically vanilla standards, keeping in mind that in Classic there's a lot of different factors at play, but this is not acceptable in 2019 when you're competing with a number of MMOs and plenty of other games. My main issue is not the structure of the world content. I actually enjoy chipping away at something like a reputation. You get that sense of accomplishment, that feeling of sticking out at something, and eventually completing it feels absolutely great. But it's just a shame that the activities involved feel worse than they did when I was grinding Tol Barad and the Firelands hubs like 10 years ago. How is this possible? Particularly when greatness is literally in this same patch with Horrific Visions. Taking a good look at Uldum, I think it's important to explain where things seem to have gone wrong. Some of the quests are pretty harmless, like squishing some scarabs, killing some temple protectors, and you feel like you're having an okay time. The problem is the tedium actually creeps up on you and you stop enjoying everything. There's always seems to be like one or two quests that look harmless on paper but turn into a complete nightmare when it comes to efficiency. For example, the Goliath Trophy. Now this has apparently been patched, so we will see how this goes next week, but they did design it this way, so what we played with was the initial intention. It had a low drop chance, and you might do this with, say, a friend or something, and after 10 or 15 it finally drops. Not for you though. It drops for your friend, and then he's stuck helping you, you're frustrated as well, and then you just want to get straight out of this area and never come back. This happens with numerous quests where they just take forever and you feel like you're really wasting your time given the rewards. What Blizzard needs is some sort of plan from the start to make sure world content actually gets the attention of something like a Mage Tower or a Horrific Vision. What tends to happen is they put all of their time and resources into a relatively short 8 to 10 hour leveling process that's pretty mindless if you don't read the quest texts, but the amount of work that goes in is actually pretty substantial. It's like a single player campaign that you complete once and never touch again. Instead you spend 10 months doing world quests in these same locations as if that's meant to suffice. Why do they bother? The resources that go into the leveling process should be going into making the overall world content engaging at endgame. No one cares about the leveling process anymore. This isn't Classic where it's a journey. For most of the player base, it is a chore that just happens to be there. I'm not learning anything about my class, going around and killing 10 frogs. I'm not learning how to group up with people, seeing as the quests that say that they require 3 people can be soloed anyway. And all I really learn is that gear is a little bit pointless and I'll be replacing it all the time, looking at an item level rather than all of the stats and the effects on my actual gear. What if they just tried something exciting for once? Not something neat and tidy, but something with a bit of mystery to it. Imagine you go to Stormsong Valley and there's more substantial events. For instance, instead of a world quest to put out some fire, what if the event is instead a mini gauntlet in the same town, completing objectives and fighting some mini bosses? You could solo it with friends, similar to a Horrific Vision. You have to go through a few little areas. Completing one area is easy, so anyone can do it. 2 is tricky, 3 is for the experienced players, but the rewards scale to push you, and you don't get the reward if you fail, and then that world quest disappears off the map. That would be something interesting that could take the Horrific Vision concept out of the instant zones and put them into the world. The way to make the zones interesting is to take the things that have worked well in the game and actually apply them to the parts that are lacking. Take the Essence system for example. As it is, it's mediocre. When I saw it, I was actually excited. Completing activities that guaranteed me power upgrades seemed like a really rewarding checklist to get to work on. Unfortunately, they've been done in the most boring way possible. Kill raid bosses, do Mythic Plus, do islands, do PvP. They just launch you into content you're either already doing or actually have zero interest in doing. This isn't exciting at all, there's nothing unique here. What if that part of Essences was instead fixed? What if in Shadowlands we had a similar system, but instead the Essences were essentially our leveling system? We arrive in this new world, we get some ancient relic at our Covenant we choose that needs to be powered up, and to do that and reach our true potential with our class and Covenant, we have to complete a range of activities, perhaps going to one of the new zones for a questline, tracking down rare mobs, do Horrific Visions like content in the zone, do a short reputation farm in interesting environments, not tied to dailies, but some sort of short-term grinding. A wide range of world activities that aren't simply a matter of doing a group of 3 quests, turning them in, a group of 3 quests, turn them in, cutscene, rinse and repeat. Make the world the sandbox that it's meant to be and ensure endgame follows a similar structure. That way the developers are prioritising creating interesting content that actually lasts a long time instead of the meter things lasting a handful of hours while we spend the rest of these months and time grinding and powering through all of the leftovers. World content in WoW today reminds me a lot of how things have changed in the world since I was a kid. The best example I can think of is this hardware store my dad used to take me to. There was this playground inside that was a lot of fun and had like a rickety bridge. There was a little rock climbing wall we could climb up to get into a tower, and it made being dragged to the store something that was fun instead of an annoyance. Well, over time that was no longer the case because parents would complain that it was too dangerous, and over time that rickety bridge became a stagnated plank essentially, and there was certainly no more rock climbing. Now that playground is long gone because kids stopped using it because they were no longer having any fun. There was nothing interesting or fun about it anymore. And that's kind of like world quests. The idea of them isn't bad, just like how a playground isn't. But all of the fun that's been taken out to ensure that there's no challenge, no danger, and it's just an entirely predictable and safe endeavour. Solving the problem is not going to come from band-aid fixes like turning dailies into world quests, killing 5 mobs instead of 10 mobs, looting 10 of something instead of 20. It's about how we go about doing those things. It's the reason people like Classic. The quests are fundamentally all the same as they are today. In fact, they're even more basic. But the danger and unpredictability in approaching those tasks is what actually kept them interesting. But Challenge is just not going to return to the game until Blizzard pull their finger out when it comes to teaching people how to play their class. They're so scared of alienating the people who've been snoozing their way through the game these past few years by having them have to go back and actually learn how to play their class, that they're willing to sacrifice any and all world content to keep that illusion going. The problem is it's those people who buy the store mounts and buy all the race changes, so I have no doubt that Activision have looked at the statistics of people who buy in-game items and who only do world-related activities, which is likely why it is that way. Blizzard don't need to pull the rug out. They need more world quests that actually act as tutorials with mechanics and mini-challenges that force people to learn things about their class. I think class-specific world quests could be a really great way to do this. Have quests that are uniquely tailored to each class and help those people to learn what they're doing, because that is what WoW is missing right now. At the moment, there is very much an us versus them mindset, with the people who only do easy content labelling the people who do anything relatively tricky as elitists, and others labelling the easy content people as casuals. The latter might be true to a degree, but I think it's more a matter of people not wanting to go outside their comfort zone because the tools aren't available in-game to slowly get better. It's either mind-numbingly boring or it's difficult right now. So getting through a lot of 8.3 is starting to become a real slog for a lot of these reasons, and look, I started this patch thinking I'd just go through and get exalted with everyone like I did with Nazjatar and Mechagon reps, but it's starting to get a lot harder in terms of just pushing through. The daily quests are a lot more tedious, partly due to a lot of the spawn rates and odd outdated mechanics. Today, for example, I was trying to do a quest in Pandaria where you have to release 6 spirits. Normally it's a pretty easy quest where you just click on 6 things, pretty close to each other, so I thought cool, I've got one of the good quests today. Apparently not, because I went over there and the layering must have been glitched or something, because there were numerous horde everywhere. And the great thing in 8.3 is, unlike in basically everywhere else in the game, if someone clicks on something before you, it actually disappears and you miss out on it, which makes you basically hate all of the other players. So it took about 3 times as long because of all of this resulting in far too much tedium for 120 odd rep or whatever it is. It makes me think that the credit Blizzard was getting for their new design philosophy, allowing people to do a handful of assaults each week instead of doing things every day, is not because they're exploring something new, but because they know this content is mediocre and people would simply stop playing if it was forced upon them every single day. I really hope it's because they had to rush this out the door and that this isn't what we can expect in Shadowlands. Shadowlands will be a make or break for Blizzard in a lot of ways, and world content is going to be what I'm looking at first and foremost. We know we can expect good raids, good dungeons, but when 70% at least of what we're going to be doing is open world activities, it's time it actually had some direction and focus. Stop feeling like an afterthought despite it being front and center in all of our daily play. Thanks for listening, and until next time.